This is the second part in a series of drawing this lady. If you're drawing along with me and need to catch up on the sketch, then check out the link in the description for the previous video. Now we're on to drawing in detail. I've got an array of graphite pencils. I've got 6 here going from soft to hard, and you can pick these up quite cheap. If you're just using one pencil, you can still benefit from this video. You're just going to have to use different pressures to simulate the different pencils, which might show up in the end result. A good rule of thumb is to start with the hardest pencil, which is the one that goes on the paper the lightest, and work your way up to the softest pencil. That allows you to build some shadows and depths as you go. The hardest pencil I'm using for this portrait is a 2H, so that's where I'm going to start. I'm starting lightly on the whites of the eyes. When you look at a photo of eyes, you'll see that the only particularly white sections are where the light captures it. The rest, especially around the edges, are much darker. To create smoother shading, I'm using the side of the pencil for the most part rather than the tip. Once I've done a light layer, I use the blending stump just to smooth it out. I'm working in small circles to do this. I'll then continue to add to this to build up depth with this pencil. So now I've blocked in the pupil lightly, I'm going to start adding some shading onto the iris. I'm working in straight lines from the centre of the eye into the outside. When you look at a pupil, you'll see small lines working from the middle outwards, so I'm trying to replicate that. I'm not worrying too much about being precise at the moment, as more detail will come as we work through the different pencils. I'm being careful to look at my reference photo to see which parts of the iris are darker. On this reference, I can see it's darker at the top of the iris because of shadow created from the eyelashes. Now I'm starting to use the next pencil to build up the shading. This is the HB pencil. I'm starting by adding some definition to the edge of the iris, which is darker than the centre. When you do this, don't add a super sharp line though. The edge of the eyes aren't a clear edge between the iris and the whites, so we need it to be a bit fuzzy. I'm also blocking in the pupil now a little bit darker, and I'm continuing to build up the lines of the iris with the HB. Here I'm lightly blocking in the lash line. You'll notice as I go through this, I'm not pressing really hard with the pencil, especially not at this point. I'm gently touching the paper with either the tip of the pencil or softly with the side of the pencil. Still with the HB pencil, I'm starting to block in some of the really dark sections light to the left of the picture, adding some definition to the crease of the eyelid and to the lash line on the right side. You can see on these sections, even when I use the side of the pencil to shade, it still looks a bit rough. This is a great example of an area that needs blending. I'm using the blending stump to smooth them out, and you can see how much better they look for it. Here's a quick tip for using a blending stump. I'm using motions similar to those with a pencil. Softly and going in the same direction as the lines, it stops it giving a scratchy, scribbly finish which we don't want. At this point, I'm happy with the HB layer on the eyes, and I'm going to start working a little bit darker with the B pencil. I'm working in the same way as the HB and adding to the darkest bits I can see in the reference photo. The outer edges of the whites of the eyes are quite a bit darker, so I'm building up the shading over there, particularly these outside edges and the corner of the right eye. Now onto the 2B pencil, and once again we're continuing to add to these darkest sections. You can see that as we go, the detail is starting to come to the drawing and we're beginning to get the depth and realism we're looking for. The key is to keep going and not to give up after the first few pencils, because the depth will come. Now that I'm getting to the darker values on the eyes, I'm going to start adding some shading to the skin. I won't be able to do the eyelashes until I've done the skin, plus it helps to visualise the darker areas in the eyes. Going back to the harder 2H pencil on the skin, I'm lightly shading. I'm being careful as I get to the skin in between the eyes because there's a very light section from the bright of the nose and I don't want to go over it too hard. Once I'm happy with this layer, I'm going to blend it out again with the blending stump. Now, as before, on with the HB on the skin to start to build up some of the darker tones. Again, notice how on the skin I'm using the side of the pencil and only using the tip very sparingly. I'm just going to keep adding and blending it out again, building it up to the point that I'm happy with the eyelids so I can add in the eyelashes. I'm not concerned that the skin looks a bit odd at the moment. I can see all the shadows in the reference photo, so that's what I'll draw. When adding the eyelashes, I'm looking closely at the reference to imitate the direction of the eyelashes. Natural eyelashes go in random directions and cross over each other. I'm doing this quite gently and they should sort of taper off at the ends. To create realism, it's always important to draw what you can see. My subject has quite dark eyelashes because of her makeup. If you were drawing someone without makeup on, you might see that their eyelashes aren't this dark and you should use a lighter pencil. You can start to see at this point just how dark the whites of the eyes are in the shadowed areas. I'm keeping adding to my shading and going up in pencil softness, blending and building up. Now I'm going to start on the eyebrows. Starting with the 2H again, I'm applying a block colour and a base of the eyebrows before blending, which I can build on with hairs using a darker pencil once I'm happy with my blended base. Now on with the B pencil on the eyebrows. I'm using small strokes in the direction of the hair. Have a good look at the reference photo because eyebrows don't all go in one direction. This lady's eyebrows are very tidy and don't stick up in the middle like some people's do, but that doesn't mean that they're all perfectly in the same direction. Once I'm happy with that, I blend it out again in circular motions. You can see that even after I've done this, I can still see rough hair strokes even though they're not as dark or prominent. That's totally fine. We can add in darker hairs with the 2B pencil and keep building up the texture. A good tip for when you think you're done is to just step back or even walk away for half an hour and then come back and have another look. You might just see a couple of sections that you want to touch up or blend out a bit, and these tweaks can make all the difference. And that's it. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, and if you'd like to join me for the next one, don't forget to hit the subscribe and the notify button so you don't miss it. In the next video, we'll be giving this lady a nose. Happy drawing, guys. I'll see you in the next one.